Do you still have a branch of your bank on your high street? Labour is today pledging to bring face-to-face banking back with 350 banking hubs in towns and villages around the country.
But one bank that's not convinced by their plans is HSBC, where economists have warned the party's plans for a higher genuine minimum wage could lead to unemployment and higher inflation. And Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds joins us now. Good morning, Mr Reynolds. We had Grant Shapps on the programme yesterday, and he was pointing out that in the recent endorsement of Labour by business, there were no 100 FTSE chief executives in the list. He was saying that's a sign that big business is still not convinced by Labour. Is he right?
Well, good morning, guys. Well, no, I'm afraid Grant Shapps is not right on a whole range of areas, but specifically on that. We've seen the most incredible endorsements from the business community for Labour's plans for the economy, showing definitively that Labour could run the economy in a way which benefits all parts of the country, in a way we frankly haven't seen for the last 14 years. Now, there was an incredible range of business leaders on that endorsement letter associated with household names, whether that's JD Sports, Wagamama, Nissan, a whole range of places. Now, for some big FTSE 100 firms, you will know they have rules, regulations in place. They can't involve themselves directly in the election. I understand that. I would simply say respectfully to any member of the Cabinet making that case, well, where are your list of business endorsers?
Sorry, you said he was wrong when he said that there was no representative of a FTSE 100 company backing you. You've just said he's right.
No, hang on. I mean, what I just said was that any Conservative making the case can put forward their own list of endorsers.
No, but the specific question was... Sorry, the reason I pick you up on it, Jonathan Reynolds, is because I really want voters to be clear about what is wrong and what is right. I'm not backing any particular party or voice, but there is an issue that today, as people register to vote, with what can they trust about what politicians say. So when you're asked a question, was Grant Shapps right when he said there is no representative of a FTSE 100 company backing Labour? It's simply not true to say that he's wrong. He is right.
Just let me be clear. You said that showed there was no significant business support for Labour, and I think it's fair to push back and say that isn't the case. There were people who had in the past been associated with very large FTSE 100 companies. I was explaining there's a regulatory issue that affects many large publicly listed businesses.
To be clear, Grant Shapps is right. I'm only saying this for the point of view of the viewer. To be clear, Grant Shapps is right when he says there is no representative for FTSE 100 company backing Labour right now in this election. That's right, isn't it? To be clear...
In relation to people's current responsibilities on that letter, that's right. But that is not the case that Grant was making. He was making a wider point, which I think is fair to push back on.
And let me move on to your banking hubs proposal. Presumably the big banks will all say the reason why we're withdrawing branches from high streets is because people these days are doing online banking. It's not cost-effective. You're going to force them through the regulator to have these banking hubs to pay for that on high streets, even though they say customers don't want them. The banks are not going to like that very much.
Well, we think it's a fair policy. It is true to say banking has changed. We all bank in slightly different ways, but access to cash on high streets is still important. I think it's a reasonable offer to make to the banks because their costs of running branches compared to their support for banking hubs is a far lower cost per bank per head than the current arrangements. What we are doing here is making sure we're not in a situation that we do have, I'm afraid, in lots of towns where there is simply no high street access to cash. If you're a smaller business, that is still important, being able to deposit cash takings that you have got. I think it's a fair offer to the banks. I think it's part of our wider plan to grow the economy in every part of the country to show we can do things differently to the last 14 years. So I think it's a good policy, part of an overall comprehensive programme. But I do think this is important. I do think how people feel about their town centres is still a really important part of how they feel about the economy. Yes, that's changed.
Right. Jonathan Reynolds, can I ask about tax? Because one of the issues I think people have is how are you all going to pay for all of these things? You're ahead in the polls, so people are particularly concerned about what a Labour government would do. Can I ask about council tax? If a Labour government comes in, would you revalue the council tax bands, which are based on property valuations going back to 1991?
No, we have this week said that's not part of our plans. We've laid out all of our revenue-raising measures in the manifesto. There are things that would produce an immediate cash injection into public services. We have made that clear.
So it's not part of your plans and you completely rule it out, to be clear?
Yes, we've made that statement this week. But I would just say on this that the premise of these questions...
That's interesting, because Jonathan Ashworth, who was on our programme yesterday, now, he promised you wouldn't re-banned. Rachel Reeves, your Shadow Chancellor, and Darren Jones, your Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, refused to rule out such a move. But you are categorically saying this morning that council tax bans would not be redrawn.
I'm saying all you need to do to look at where the revenue will come from Labour's manifesto is look in the manifesto. There are specific ways we would raise money that would go into public services.
Not
but I would
everybody,
also say...
not all of our viewers will read your manifesto, so it's really important for them to hear this morning.
OK,
well, there will be no change under a Labour government to council tax bans.
No, these are not part of our plans, but to answer your earlier point...
No, I asked, no change. No change to council tax bans.
There is no change to council tax bans in our manifesto.
Hang on, Mr Reynolds. You know, let's kind of be clear here. You aren't saying to us that in the next Parliament there will be no tax measures in any Labour budget other than those which are in the manifesto, are you?
Look, what I'm saying to you is the premise of these questions is that we cannot... Let me just answer this point. The premise of these questions is that the economy cannot grow any faster than it has done for the last 14 years, and therefore the only way to fund public services is tax rises. We reject that case entirely. That's exactly what the Labour manifesto makes the case against, that we can do better than we've done for the last 14 years. If the economy were not to improve on the performance of the last 14 years, there would be difficult decisions. But we are absolutely confident in the measures that we are putting forward. We know the difference that can be made. Let's be frank, we're only pointing out that if the economy had grown in the last 14 years, anything like the rate of growth under the last Labour government, there would be billions of pounds more being spent on public services right now.
I know, but look, Rachel Reeves said there'll be no rise in income tax, national insurance and VAT. And she also said we're going to do this on non-doms, taxation, this on private schools, VAT. What she hasn't said herself in the manifesto or anywhere was we will not do any other tax measures at all in any budget in the next Parliament. It sounds like you are saying that if it's not in the manifesto, we're not going to do it. I mean, if I was Rachel Reeves, I'd be furious with you.
No, look, we have a set of measures that would make an immediate difference to people's lives that are in the manifesto and which have hypothecated clear explanations of how they will be fully funded. The big case in the Labour manifesto is a case for wealth creation, is a case for growth. We know through those measures we can make a tangible difference to the performance of the economy, to not have the stagnation and chaos of the last few years. That is the argument that we are making. And the reason that Rachel or Darren in the team...
I understand that, and that's totally compelling. However, Susanna asked you, can you rule out a change in council tax bans in the next Parliament, or a change in capital gains tax rates in the next Parliament, or a change in fuel duty in the next Parliament, or an air passenger duty in the next Parliament? You can't rule those things out, can you?
Well, look, we're not going to write a budget for a few years' time during a general election campaign, but we've been absolutely clear where revenue will come from to pay for public services, and absolutely clear about the argument we're making, which is for a stronger economy that benefits all parts of the country. That is our industrial strategy, our green prosperity plan, our changes to planning so we get things built. These are tangible measures that would make a difference.
You said that the whole manifesto is based on growth. And then you said, if the economy doesn't improve, difficult decisions will have to be made. So can we presume that if you don't hit your growth targets, taxes will go up under a Labour government?
If I didn't think we could hit that growth target, I wouldn't even be a candidate in this general election, let alone someone who wants to be the business secretary. I know the difference we can make. The only thing that would stop that is if we don't get the mandate for change that we're asking for in this general election. That's the case that we're making. It's practical, it's serious, it would make a difference. It's in stark contrast to the other political parties. And if people want change and a stronger economy, they can vote Labour knowing that will happen.
Keir Starmer said at the weekend that you have to make enemies. You have to have tough decisions with business. What is the thing which you will do in the first few months that business is going to really hate?
No, I don't think there's anything they're going to really hate. I think they want the kind of planning system that will deliver homes and infrastructure. I think they want an industrial strategy that's got the certainty to invest for the long term. I think they want the reforms to business rates and the apprenticeship levy and the closer trading relationship with the European Union and the wider trade links that we're seeking to deliver upon. Business is desperate for an alternative to the chaos and stagnation, as is the country, and only a vote for Labour will deliver that.
Very interesting. I mean, I have to say, I've never seen a government which didn't have a round with business. But anyway, we'll see. It all sounds very nice. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds, and good luck.